So we are going to do some patterning with the wax and the fabric. First thing we're going to do is pin our fabric to the box. Now, I'd already previously talked about how we pin the fabric, but I thought, while I'm here, I'd show you how. And you'd see that the fabric's been nice and ironed, it's flat. It is actually too big for my box. So again, we previously I had talked about that once I finish this particular area, I would finish patterning it, whatever that means for me. I would then take the push pins out, reposition my fabric, and keep patterning it. So you want it nice and taut. You don't want it to kind of sag too much. So I'm even going to put one over here, a pin over here. I had thought about doing multiple videos where I showed you how to do each one of these tools, but I think what I'm going to do is consolidate all the tools that we're going to talk about into one video. I'm going to start with a brush. So I have here this nice little kind of calligraphy brush. You'll see that for me, since I've already got the tools kind of dipped in the wax, I don't want them to fall in the wax. I went ahead and just put a clothespin just to keep them from falling into the lip. It's been my experience that they fall. So here's my brush, and you'll see that I want a nice kind of transparent line on the fabric. If it's too cold, it'll be white. It won't kind of move nicely along. It'll feel like a dry brush more than anything else. So that's essentially how a brush works. Obviously, you can do many different designs with a brush. You could do a series of dots. You can do lines. You could make shapes. And depending on the thickness of the brush and the type of brush you use, I wouldn't use a foam brush, but the type of bristle brush you use, you're going to get different effects. Our second tool that I'm going to demonstrate is a jointing tool. And the jointing tool is basically a fountain pen for wax. So you have here a well where the wax kind of sits in this well. The well is made out of metal, and the reason that it's made out of metal is because you want it to kind of hold the heat of the wax. It can be kind of drippy, so I often have a little piece of cardboard or newspaper. This one's pretty thin little line. It's to kind of catch the drips, so the drips don't go anywhere I don't want them to. Make some swirls. I can make lines. Depending on the spout, the width of the spout, that's going to determine also how fast the flow is and what kind of line quality I can get. But it's a great tool, and it comes in a variety of spout widths. And even kind of handle, sometimes the handles are just this I think this is just brass. Sometimes the handles are copper. I actually prefer the less expensive ones. It seems to me like the copper ones are a lot of money for nothing all that special. So that's your jointing tool. I also talk in the presentation, I'm talking about japs, which are blocks. All the stamps basically function the same way, whether it's a carved block like a traditional jap, or it's a found kind of cardboard like this one is. It's just a tube from yarn, if I'm not mistaken, or even like a little wooden block. This block comes from a wooden set of toys for children. Basically, you're going to want to heat up that stamp, and here too I might use something to catch those drips, and I'm going to stamp it on my fabric. Depending on the stamp, sometimes you can get more than one stamp per kind of immersion in the dye, which is kind of nice. And you can even kind of get a variety. You can get a really strong kind of impression the first time, and then as you press it repeatedly, then it gets lighter and lighter. It might change a little bit. And that's really, so what I want is not to press too hard. I want a kind of a gentle amount of pressure. I definitely want this open box, because the whole point of this open box is that if I were to unpin it and look on the other side, I would see that the wax has gone all the way through. I definitely want it to go all the way through so that it'll saturate, so that I can get a resist both from the top and the bottom, despite whichever, whether I decide to flip it over to dye paint it or I'm going to do it from this direction. So that basically covers how we're going to apply wax with our various tools. Again, this applies to a brush, to veggie stamps to our jaunting tools, our jops. It applies across the board. You want kind of a generous amount of wax on your tool, and you want a way to collect any drips if that's something you don't necessarily think is part of your design. And then you want to have fun. So that's the plan.